If we were actually sitting together right now on some beat-up couch, cheap popcorn between us, I'd probably start this story with a joke. Something like, so my mom chose her boyfriend over her own kids. Yeah, it's exactly as bad as it sounds. And then I'd go quiet for a second. Because as much as I've told this story in my head, it never comes out polished. There's no TED Talk ending. It's just what happened. My name is Maya. I was 17 when all of this went down. There are houses where being 17 means stressing about prom, college applications, and whether your friends are mad at you. And then there are houses like mine, where at 17, you're stirring pasta on the stove with one hand and paying the phone bill on your cracked screen with the other. I used to joke that I was the manager of a very badly run motel. Guests: one overworked mom, one neurodivergent little brother, one constantly overdrafted bank account. Nobody checked out. Nobody tipped. My mom, Sandra, worked nights at a hospital about half an hour away. My little brother, Noah, is on the spectrum, high functioning, like the professionals like to label it, with attention issues on top. What that means in real life is routines are everything. You move his cereal box to a different shelf without warning. Congratulations, you've just bought yourself a 20-minute meltdown before the bus even turns onto your street. So my mornings looked like this. Check. Is the blue t-shirt washed? Not the other blue, the soft blue, the tagless one. Check. Noise-canceling headphones in his backpack. Check. The same cereal in the same cabinet, same spot, same angle. All this while my mom was already gone. Her scrubs whispering through the dark hours, smelling like coffee and exhaustion. You know that deep tired that has nothing to do with sleep? The kind you carry in your shoulders and the way you sigh when you open another bill. That was my mom. I finished high school early. Not because I was a genius, just because I sprinted through classes and summer school, like graduation, was a finish line with oxygen on the other side. I was supposed to go straight to college. Instead, I put it on hold for a year and picked up full-time shifts as a cashier at the convenience store down the road. You can laugh at the 1 year part if you want. I do now. Every time I watch my mom open another envelope and go pale, something in my stomach twisted. So I started paying half the groceries, the phone bill, chipping in for electricity. I even learned how to argue politely with the power company when they threatened to cut us off. For a little while somehow it felt like we were almost stable. Not fine, just less drowning. Noah had a therapist that actually understood him. Mom had a few co-workers she talked about like they were friends. I had a routine, and if I squinted, it looked a little like adulthood. And then the fog started creeping in. It started small. A 20 missing from my wallet. Then a 10. Then coins from the jar by the microwave. At first I blamed myself. Maybe I miscounted. Maybe I spin it and forgot. Maybe I was just tired. You'll notice how long I went before I considered maybe someone's taking it. Around the same time, my mom's mood went from tired and snappy sometimes to something else. She started coming home and going straight to the bathroom, locking the door for long stretches. When she came out, her eyes were jittery, her nose red, movements too sharp or too slow. Little things set her off. The blanket on the couch wasn't folded right. Noah humming while building with blocks was too loud. I bought the wrong brand of pasta, even though the other one was on sale. I told myself it was stress, inflation, overwork, life. I kept telling myself that right up until the Tuesday afternoon. She sat us down at the sticky kitchen table, smoothed the plastic tablecloth, and said with this forced brightness, "So, my boyfriend's going to move in." His name was Darren. I'd heard about him in pieces. This guy from work. Someone who understands night shifts. He's really supportive. Supportive is one of those words that means everything and nothing at the same time. Noah was spinning a pencil on the table, eyes on his hands. That's his way of being in the conversation without actually looking at anyone. Is he nice? He asked, voice flat. That's Noah's version of, is he safe? Mom jumped in. Of course he's nice. He's amazing. He said he'll help with the rent. He's really good with kids. That line. Really good with kids. The kind of people who are actually good with kids don't usually need a spokesperson. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say, absolutely not. This isn't a hostel. He's not moving in. But I was 17. My name wasn't on the lease. Technically, it wasn't my apartment, even if half the food in the cabinets came from my paycheck. So instead, I said the weak thing. How long have you been seeing him? Oh, a few months. She waved it off. He knows how hard things have been. He wants to help with chores and bills. This could be good for us, Maya. There it was. The promise of help. The fantasy that someone was finally going to share the load. I wish I could tell you I listened to my gut. I didn't. I stripped out the tiny storage room, made space for this stranger who was supposedly going to save us. He moved in on a Thursday. 2 beat-up duffel bags, a scratched TV, a cheap cologne that hit the room before he did. He hugged my mom like they were in some movie. Then he clapped me on the shoulder like I was a co-worker rather than a kid. You must be the one keeping this place running, he said with a grin that was just a little too wide. Your mom says you're really responsible. He meant it as a compliment. It landed like a threat. The first week, he didn't even have his own key. He banged on the door whenever Mom wasn't home, like we were the hotel staff and he'd misplaced his room card. He opened cabinets without asking, changed the TV channel mid-episode while Noah was watching, rearranged the couch cushions because this way makes more sense. He did a few hours as a rideshare driver, then spent the rest of his time like a permanent dent in our sofa, leaving crumbs everywhere. At dinner, he talked big about picking up more shifts soon, just waiting for the right schedule. Meanwhile, Mom looked at him like he was oxygen. The first time Noah asked him for help with homework, he barely glanced over. You're old enough to figure that out yourself, he said, flipping a channel. Kids these days are spoiled. I felt my ears go hot. He asked for help, not your judgment. I snapped before I could stop myself. Noah froze, pencil hovering, eyes darting between us. From the sink, Mom muttered, can everyone just relax? It's been a long day. Relax. Sure. Because nothing says relax. Like watching a grown man dismiss your 8-year-old brother for daring to need something. That was honestly one of his better days. Over the next few weeks, the truth showed up in pieces. He always had a reason why he couldn't work more. The system is rigged. Gas is too expensive. My boss is an idiot, but he never had a problem eating the food I bought on clearance or drinking the juice and putting the empty carton back in the fridge. Noah would open it, expecting a full container and get nothing but air. His face would crumple in this quiet, disappointed way, and I'd feel my jaw clench. Can you please not leave empty stuff in there? I asked Darren one night as calmly as I could. It really throws Noah off. He laughed. It's good for kids to be disappointed, builds character. Meanwhile, both my cash and my mom's tips were evaporating. The envelope behind the cleaning supplies where we kept rent? Light. The cookie tin with emergency money? Thinner. The shoe box in the back of my closet I thought no one knew about? Raided. I knew it wasn't Noah. He hates touching change. Says it smells like metal and strangers. I also knew it wasn't magic. The bathroom turned into a black hole. Mom and Darren would disappear in there for long stretches. Door locked. No shower running. Foil bits in the trash. Nosebleeds Mom blamed on dry air. Mood swings that went from clingy and tearful to cabinet-slamming rage in minutes. Deep down, I knew what it meant. I just really didn't want to. If you're wondering where my actual dad was in all this, join the club. His name is Eric. He lived across town, worked a steady job, believed in tough love and schedules. He's the kind of dad who will lecture you for an hour about responsibility, then quietly fix your flat tire. He and Mom split when I was in middle school. He never really stepped into a father role for Noah. No blood connection. Easy excuse, and everyone just kind of let that slide. He wasn't a villain, just distant, strict, comfortable behind rules. When things turned into actual danger, though, he usually showed up, grumbling, but present. Noah, meanwhile, started to shrink. He stopped padding around the apartment in his socked feet, started tiptoeing past the couch like a cat in enemy territory. "Is it okay if I get a snack?" he'd whisper to me in our own kitchen. He started sleeping on my floor again. "Just for tonight," he'd say. And then it was every night, curled up in a blanket next to my bed like some small, scared animal. Darren's words toward him got sharper too. "If it were up to me, I'd have you doing push-ups every time you forgot something. Kids like you need discipline. Nobody's going to care about your special brain in the real world, kid." Every time I push back, "You don't talk to him like that. You're a guest here, remember?" He'd smirk. "Guess I forgot you're the boss." Mom's standard line, "Both of you, stop, please." Never him. Always both. I started waking up with this low-level dread humming in my chest, like I was waiting for something to snap. I just didn't know when. The day it finally did was supposed to be a good day. Noah had done well on some school assessment, and I'd promised him a mini celebration while Mom worked a night shift. I'd saved up to buy him this little art kit. He'd been circling in a store flyer for weeks. Bright paints, stencils, cheesy sticker. The whole thing probably cost less than what Darren blew on fast food in a day. But to Noah, it was treasure. We spread everything out on the kitchen table, put on music. For once, the apartment felt light. He was so focused, tongue poking out a little, lining up a stencil on an old t-shirt. Then the little bottle of paint tipped. A splash on his shirt, a few drops on the tile. Washable. No big deal. Except Noah froze, completely still, eyes locked on the stain like it was blood. "Hey, it's okay," I said immediately, grabbing paper towels. "We'll rinse it. It comes right out. Don't move, okay? Don't step in it." I went to the bathroom for cleaner, humming along to the music, still smiling. Then I heard it. A heavy thud. Then Noah's scream. Not the frustrated yell he sometimes lets out when he's overwhelmed. A real scream. The kind that hits a pitch you don't forget. The spray bottle dropped out of my hand. I ran back to the kitchen and walked into the worst version of every fear I'd had. Darren was towering over Noah, one hand clamped on the back of his neck, shoving him toward the table. Noah's cheek was bright red, red in the shape of a hand. Tears streaked his face, mixing with paint. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. He kept repeating, voice broken. "What is wrong with you?" Darren was yelling. "You can't keep anything clean for 10 seconds. Do you know how much this stuff costs? You're so spoiled. There are moments when your body moves before your brain." I shoved myself between them, forcing his hand off Noah. "Don't touch him," I said. My voice was shaking but low. "You do not put your hands on him, ever. He made a mess." Darren snapped. Like that answered everything. "Someone's gotta teach him consequences." "He's 8, I said. "He needs a clean shirt and for you to back off." Noah was behind me now, fingers fisted in the back of my t-shirt. I could feel him trembling. Darren stepped closer, puffing himself up, trying to fill the space. "You think you're in charge here?" he hissed, breath hot with coffee and something harsher. "You think you can talk to me like that in my house?" "It's not your house," I shot back. "You don't pay rent. You don't buy food. You just hit a kid for spilling washable paint. So no, you don't get to claim anything here." His eyes went cold in a way that scared me more than the yelling. That's the moment I remembered the small canister on my keychain. Months before, When I told my dad I didn't like the sound of this new boyfriend, Eric had taken me out for lunch. After the awkward small talk, he slid a tiny can of defense spray across the table. "For emergencies," he said. "If you ever need it, use it. Then call the police. You won't be in trouble with me." At the time, I'd rolled my eyes, clipped it to my keys anyway. Standing in that kitchen, with Noah's cheek blooming red and Darren crowding my space, it didn't feel overprotective. It felt like the only rope left. "Back up," I said, reaching slowly toward the counter where my keys lay. He smirked, took another step. "Or what? You gonna cry to your mommy? Call the cops because someone finally told your brother no?" My hand closed around the can. My heart was hammering so loud I could feel it behind my eyes. I popped the safety and pressed. The spray hit him mostly in the face. Not gracefully, not like in movies. Just a desperate, shaking aim. He staggered back, swearing, clawing at his eyes. The air burned my own throat and nose. For a second I panicked. What if I just made things worse? "You crazy little—" He started, but it dissolved into raw, strangled yells. Noah screamed again. I grabbed his wrist, dragged him down the hallway. "In my room!" I gasped. "Go, go!" I shoved him inside, shut the door, and locked it. "Get on the bed. Cover your ears. Don't open this door unless it's me or the police, okay?" He nodded, eyes huge, and crawled under the blanket like he was trying to disappear. In the kitchen, Darren was still cursing and stumbling into furniture. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped my phone twice before managing to dial. The dispatcher sounded calm in a way that made everything inside me feel even more chaotic. I told her a man in our home had just hit my 8-year-old brother, that I'd sprayed him, that I was scared. She told me officers were on the way. "Stay in a locked room if you can. Keep the line open." I should have stayed put. I know. Instead, I ran to the front door and grabbed my mom's keys off the hook, shoving them into my pocket. If Darren got his hands on those, he wouldn't have to knock ever again. By the time I slid back down the wall outside my bedroom, he'd stumbled out the front door still shouting threats. Here's where I did something that still hurts to think about. While I was on hold with the dispatcher, while my hands were still vibrating from fear, I called my mom. I really thought she'd say, "You did the right thing. I'm coming home." She picked up on the second ring, voice groggy. "What is it?" "I'm on break." "They're sending the police," I blurted. "He hit Noah. There's a handprint on his face. I sprayed him. I locked us in my room. You need to come home." Silence, a long one. "You sprayed him?" she said finally, voice sharpening. "Why would you do that?" "Because he was hurting Noah." My voice went high, almost hysterical. He had his hand on his neck. "He hit him." "What was I supposed to do? Watch." "You always exaggerate, Maya," she snapped. "You're so dramatic. I told you he has a temper, but he'd never really hurt him. And you called the police? Do you know what that could do to his record? To my life?" I stared at the wall. "He already hurt him," I whispered. "There's a mark on his face." "I can't leave work," she hissed. "We're short-staffed. I'll get written up. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. You overreacted. We'll talk when I get home." The line went dead. Whatever part of me still believed she'd pick us first. Cracked right there. The officers arrived. They took pictures of Noah's cheek, of the scattered art supplies, of the tiny can of spray on the counter. They asked me to tell the story, then tell it again and again. Noah, still clutching an ice pack to his face, answered their gentle questions in stilted whispers, watching me like he was checking if he was doing it right. They tried calling my mom. She didn't pick up. They talked about reports and temporary protective orders. They said words like documented and incident that made everything feel unreal, like we were props in some training video. They told me my dad could come file for a protective order, that nothing was guaranteed, but it would help. After they left, the apartment felt hollow, like the walls were listening. That's when my mom came home. Not rushing, not frantic. She walked in with her work bag on her shoulder, jaw tight, eyes flashing. "What did you do?" she demanded. "I protected him," I said, standing a little in front of Noah without even thinking about it. "He hit him. There's a report. There are pictures. You called the police on my boyfriend," she cut in. "Do you have any idea what you've done to my life? To our life?" "He did that when he hit Noah," I said. "You weren't here. Someone had to." "You think you know everything?" She threw back. "You pay a few bills and babysit your brother. And now, you think you run this house? Babysit? That one hurt. I'm not babysitting. I'm raising him with you. I've been keeping this place from falling apart while you were." Her eyes flicked just once toward the bathroom, toward the locked door, the foil. "You are a child," she said coldly. "You don't understand adult problems. He's trying. You embarrassed him. You embarrassed me. Do you know how hard it is to find someone who accepts my situation?" It clicked then. Not just about love or loneliness for her. About having someone who'd co-sign her choices. Who'd go down with her so she didn't have to admit she was falling. In that math, Noah and I were extra. Optional. "I understand enough," I said quietly. "I understand you're using again. I understand he is too. And I understand that I told you he hit your son. And you took his side." Something in her face flinched, then hardened. "You don't get to talk to me like that in my house." Funny, how many people kept reminding me it wasn't my house, considering I was the only one acting like it was a home worth protecting. "Okay," I said. "Then we'll get out of your house." She laughed. "Where are you gonna go? You think your father's going to take you both in? You think he wants this mess?" The thing about being underestimated is people forget how much planning you've done in your head while they weren't looking. I'd already called my dad from the bathroom in the tiny gap after the police left and before she got home. I'd already told him everything, my words tumbling over each other. I'd already heard his voice shift from shock to steel. "Pack what you need," he'd said. "I'll be there in the morning. We'll sort it out." I already asked him, I told her now. He said yes. The argument that followed was ugly. Slamming doors, accusations, words you can't unsay. She called me ungrateful, dramatic, disloyal. I called her selfish, reckless, gone. Noah sat on the couch, hands over his ears, eyes squeezed shut. Eventually, she stormed out. The door shook in its frame. I didn't sleep that night. I packed, not carefully, the way you do for a planned move. The frantic kind of packing where you throw clothes, schoolwork, vital documents into trash bags and mismatched suitcases, birth certificates, medical files, Noah's one stuffed animal he still held on bad nights. Every item into a bag felt like a small funeral. Dad showed up in the morning with coffee, a tight jaw, and extra boxes. He didn't say much to my mom. She hovered in the doorway, arms crossed, tossing out last-ditch lines. "You don't have to go. You're overreacting." It was one bad argument. It was one too many, I said. He hit him. That's my line. The thing about lines is, once you finally draw them, you realize how long you've let people blur them. We left most of the furniture, most of the dishes. My dad said he'd handle the landlord. That losing a deposit was better than losing safety. Noah held my hand all the way down the stairs, squeezing so hard my fingers went numb. We drove to my dad's in near silence. Noah fell asleep in the back seat. His cheek was mostly faded by then, but I could still see the outline if I looked too long. Living with my dad wasn't some magic reset. It was better, safer, but not soft. Dad is a rules guy. Curfews, chores. You live, here you contribute. He laid it out the first night. "You can stay here as long as you're in school or working," he said. "House rules apply. Curfew. No exceptions. I'll help with Noah, but I am not signing up to raise another kid completely on my own again. We'll look at legal options. It's not going to be simple." Spoiler, it wasn't. He started making calls to legal aid, child services. Anyone who might know how to turn my ex's boyfriend hit my non-biological kid into something the system understood. While he did the paperwork, I did the rest. New school enrollment for Noah, transferring his therapy, adjusting him to a new room with different shadows and different noises at night. I kept working at the convenience store, now commuting by bus. Walking past our old building for shifts felt like dragging my feet over old cuts. The legal process was slow, cold, necessary. Lawyers asked us to go over that day in the kitchen again and again. We talked about custody, guardianship, supervised visits, the difference between legal and physical custody. Words I hadn't cared about before became my homework. They asked about Noah's biological father. He'd been gone so long, he was more ghost than person. The court treated it as abandonment once they failed to track him down or get any response. They asked about my mom's family. There wasn't anyone safe, willing, or both. So my dad, who had no blood tie to Noah, became the only stable option on paper and in real life. The court granted him temporary guardianship while they evaluated everything else. Translation: Noah stayed with us while the adults shuffled papers. I tried a summer program for kids like Noah once, filled out 1,000,000 forms, listed every trigger, every coping strategy. When I turned it in, the coordinator smiled and said, "You forgot to add his mother to the pickup list." I swallowed. "She's not allowed to pick him up right now." "Do you have a court order?" she asked. "Not yet," I admitted. She gave me that tight smile. "Without documents, if she comes and proves she's his mother, we can't legally stop her." I walked out to the parking lot and had a full panic spiral in the driver's seat. I pictured Mom showing up with Darren, saying all the right things, charming the staff, taking Noah away while I watched. I pulled him from the program before it even started, lost the deposit, missed work to stay home with him. My dad wasn't thrilled, but between services and safety, I knew which one I was picking. College, when I finally started, wasn't the dream I'd imagined. I went part-time, took buses between campus, work, and Noah's school. I'd leave lectures early for therapy appointments, get calls from his new school about fire drills gone wrong, and bolt across town to find him under a desk, hands over his ears, rocking. I crawled under there with him while some teacher looked helplessly on. "I'm sorry I ruined your school thing," he whispered in the car later. I had to pull over because I couldn't see through my tears. At home, Dad frowned when I told him I'd left a test mid-exam. "You can't keep dropping everything every time he struggles," he said. "You'll lose your scholarship. Life doesn't work like that, Maya." What was I supposed to do? Leave him under the desk alone until you got off at 6? He didn't have a good answer. Just fear and frustration, same as me. My grades slid. I got the academic probation letter. I met with an advisor who suggested I cut my load even more. Everything took longer, but quitting wasn't an option. Somewhere in the middle of that, my mom started texting. First, long messages about treatment programs and getting clean again. Pictures of certificates from support groups. Inspirational quotes. "I miss you. I miss him. You're my whole world," I replied once. Said I was glad she was getting help. Said Noah was safe. Said maybe, if she stayed stable, supervised visits could be a thing someday. The next messages were different. "You think you're better than me. You stole my son. You always wanted to be his mother. You made a big deal out of one slap. Parents discipline their kids. One slap." That's how she filed that day in her head. I stopped responding. Showed the text to our lawyer instead. Blocked her number after one too many midnight spirals of apology and blame in the same paragraph. She started showing up outside. Noah's new school once, standing across the street at dismissal, just far enough away to make staff nervous, but not enough for them to do anything concrete. One of the aides recognized her from a photo in the file and called the social worker. My dad was furious. Why did you respond to her at all? He demanded. You gave her hope. She is his mother, I said quietly. She'll always have some kind of say. She gave that up the second she let that man hurt him. He shot back. It's a nice, clean sentence. Real life is messier. But he wasn't wrong about the hurt. The final court hearings dragged out over months. I sat on hard benches while lawyers argued about my life in calm, practiced voices. Our lawyer laid out everything. The incident, the police report, the photos, the history of substance use. My mom's lawyer talked about a single, isolated lapse, about her commitment to recovery, about a mother who loves her children. I was asked if I wanted to say anything. My legs shook all the way to that little podium, but I said yes. I told the judge the story. Not just that day, but the months before. The money. The bathroom. Noah's shrinking world. My voice cracked in places I thought had gone numb. My mom cried quietly while I spoke. I still don't know what exactly she was crying for. The judge listened, nodded, said the words, child safety, stability, best interest. In the end, the court formalized what had already been happening. My dad became Noah's legal guardian. My mom got supervised. Heavily restricted contact tied to proof of sobriety and follow-through. On paper, it looked like a win. In my chest, it felt like a funeral. Some stubborn part of me had been holding out for the version of her who got clean and came back for us, steady and solid. The paperwork made it clear that version was probably not coming. We heard later that Darren took a plea deal, did some time, got conditions, counseling, whatever. He'll get to walk out one day and start over. We're still here, working around the cracked places he left. These days from the outside, my life looks normal-ish. I go to classes, work part-time, make dinner, check homework, text my few friends back at weird hours. Noah goes to school with an IEP and a teacher who actually understands him. He has a couple of friends who don't flinch at his quirks. He joined a little after-school club where they build things and talk about video games. He still sleeps on my floor sometimes when the shadows in his room feel wrong. My dad still gets snappy about lights left on in the thermostat. He still doesn't always get why certain textures make Noah gag or why unexpected fire drills are basically his worst nightmare. But he's trying. He went to a workshop about sensory issues once, grumbling the whole time, and came back with handouts covered in highlighter. He stuck them on the fridge without saying a word. One Saturday, I came home from work and found him and Noah on the living room floor, buried in plastic pieces from some overly complicated build-it-yourself set. They'd clearly messed it up 3 times already. Dad was holding the instructions upside down. Noah was patiently flipping them around for him. They were laughing, real laughing. No one was flinching. I stood in the doorway for a minute and just let myself breathe. People ask sometimes in careful ways, do you ever wish you hadn't called the police? Do you think there was another way that wouldn't have blown everything up? Do I feel guilty? Yeah. I grew up parenting my parent. Guilt is like a second skin. Do I regret it? Not for a second. If I had done nothing that day, if I'd let fear of being dramatic win, I'd have to live with something a lot heavier than guilt. I'd have to live with knowing I watched my brother get hurt and stayed silent. Our family didn't explode because I dialed 3 numbers. It was already cracking. The call just made it visible. Every once in a while, when the house is finally quiet and I should be asleep, I let myself think about the version of my life I thought I'd have. The one where mom stayed clean, met someone kind, or stayed single and got into yoga or houseplants. The one where I left for college with a suitcase and came back for holidays to a home that felt like rest, not triage. In that life, I'm just another tired student complaining about finals. I grieve that life, and I'm still grateful for the one I have. Both can be true. So, yeah, that's the story. No neat bow, no viral ready morale. Just a 17-year-old who got tired of being told she was too much and finally drew a line. And an 8-year-old who deserved a home where he didn't have to tiptoe around his own kitchen.